Hey guys, this is D.I.D. Choi here with another Logic 11 video, and this time we're actually going to compare it with the brand new iZotope RX11 as well. Now, one of the big features of Logic 11 was the stem splitter, and this has actually been a function that kind of existed within iZotope's RX for quite a long time. Like, I started with version 7, and I think it existed at that point too, and it's just been getting better and better with each version. But up till at least version 10 with RX, the stem splitter had never actually been quite good enough that I was like, I would use this. Like, no, stem splitting was never at that point. And obviously, with Logic 11, I'm very curious. Is it going to be better than iZotope RX? Will it actually be usable in a professional setting? Maybe I might be able to get pieces and bits out of it and sample it for different songs or use the sounds in some different creative way, or just for listening to the different stems and isolating and learning how to arrange and how bands play. So let's see just how good Logic Stem Splitter is and also compare it with the brand new RX11. So first off, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. As a demo piece, I'm using Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, which means this video will probably get claimed, right? And to support me, you can watch, like, comment, subscribe, and all that kind of stuff with other videos. Alright, so here we go. So here we have the Bohemian Rhapsody. All you have to do in the new Logic Pro 11 is right-click, and click on Stem Splitter, which is also down in Processing. And you can see it gives you the categories Vocal, Drums, Bass, and Other. And there aren't any other bells and whistles, very simple, just very straightforward. You get these 4 stems, right? Now, to clarify, some people think, oh, stem splitter, does that mean I can isolate the snare drum and the kick drum and the toms and the cymbals? No. Does it mean I can isolate the lead vocal and the background vocal? No. Does it mean I can isolate the piano and the guitar? No. All it is vocals, which includes all backing vocals, choirs, crowd sounds, whatever, anything that they determine as human, essentially. And this could also include vocal chops and effects and stuff with kind of synthesized sounds, if it sounds enough like a vocal. Same thing with drums, it isolates all of the drums. If there's percussion elements like a shaker, tambourine, that'll probably also get included. Anything percussion is basically put into the drums, and it's just one stereo track. Bass, I'm pretty sure it's just trying to isolate a bass guitar sound, but I actually don't know how it fares with acoustic upright bass, synth bass, and that kind of thing. And finally, in the other category is other, everything else. Pianos, synths, guitars, ukuleles, pads, what have you. So I'm going to go ahead here and press OK, and let's actually see how long this takes, because in my experience, the stem splitter is pretty fast. See, all the tracks were already made, and it's just taking some time to create the overview of each track. Cool. Alright, so we have the tracks from Stem Splitter here. I actually recorded this whole video and the computer audio didn't record properly, so here I am doing it all over again. So, listening to the tracks, what I can tell you, it sounds pretty good. Like, it's pretty magical for any other kind of audio engineering that existed so far, unless you compare it to iZotope RX, which we're gonna do. So, if you listen here to some of the vocals.
My time has come, sent shivers down my spine, body's aching all the time.
Right? It sounds pretty good. Like, the vocal is isolated, you don't hear any of the other instruments there, but there is artifacting, you know, the stuff that kind of sounds like right? And I believe that is because of cymbal bleed. Not cymbal bleed in the original recording. I'm pretty sure they recorded those vocals separately at Air Studios. But what I'm talking about is the hi-hat, I'm guessing, in this section, being kind of cross-bleeding into the vocal track. So if we listen to the drums, okay, so it's ride cymbal. Right? What you notice is the kick and the snare are very clear. Like, they sound like proper kick and snare. But if you listen for that cymbal, there's a lot of holes and missing pieces in that cymbal. And finally, if we look in the other track, which is everything else, the guitars, keys, whatever else, you will probably hear a little bit of a trace of that ride cymbal. So let's listen here. Right? You hear that little kind of high frequency sound, right? That is part of the ride cymbal. So if you listen together, listen for that ride cymbal, see if you hear a clearer image of that cymbal. Okay, so what you notice there is every time you see little peaks and transients in the vocal part, the cymbal kind of gets a little lost. But everywhere else, where previously, the cymbal sounded a little thin, the cymbal sounds a lot thicker now. Okay, so now let's add in the vocal part and listen just to that ride cymbal and see if it sounds any better.
My time has come, sent shivers down my spine.
Exactly. The ride cymbal sounds nice, clear, and precise when all three of those tracks are activated. And what does that mean? That means the algorithm slash AI or whatever it is not really sure what the ride cymbal is, right? So it's putting parts of it with the vocal, parts of it with the drums, and parts of it with the other track, right? So that is basically the biggest problem with Stem Splitter, right? Everything sounds really good. Let's listen to bass too. Right? The bass sounds really good too. Pretty clean. There's a little bit of this like kind of ripping sound, like it almost sounds like there's a broken cone or a tweeter in a speaker. But the bass is a really good, well isolated part. And so are the kick and snare, so are most of the vocals, so are most of the other track. But it's just that high frequency cymbal and sibilance and maybe high ends of acoustic guitars. And this track obviously doesn't have any bright synths in it, but if there are bright synths, I'm sure that stuff will also kind of cross-contaminate it within the tracks, right? So that's the next biggest problem of Stem Splitter, where it sounds pretty good, but it's not quite close enough. Okay, let's listen to a different section now.
So you think you can stop me and spit it fire?
So you notice a couple of the words there are a little bit harder to hear, and there is some artifacting. Let's listen to the drums at the same part. Okay, so the hi-hat sounds quite like it's been recorded with a terrible MP3 codec, right? Like very low quality compressed. And if you listen to the cymbals too, some of the cymbal hits are quite good actually, but some, especially the lower cymbal, listening to this excerpt here, it sounds a little weird. So that last cymbal hit was decent, but the second one here, right around here, like it's kind of crushed, like you can hear some artifacting, right? Let's listen to that exact section in the other track. Alright, there's all kinds of this really high frequency information. What if I took an EQ and just filtered out the high frequencies down to maybe 4K-ish? A lot better isolated guitar sound, right? What if I do the opposite of that and just keep everything under 4K to make the slope a little bit steeper, a little bit higher than 4K, and listen, and maybe we'll hear the bits and pieces of the cymbal that have been wrongly added to this other track. You hear that? Like crickets? Now, some of this lower information you see here is part of the upper end of the guitar, right? But not all of it is. Let's take it a little bit higher. Yeah, so this stuff is mostly cymbal bleed that should be in the drum track. So what if I play the drum track and the cymbal part here together? Will it sound more coherent, more full? Let's take it out. So I think adding it in does fill in some of the holes, but there's still some stuff missing that's probably in the vocal track, but that's the idea. Now listening to the bass in the more kind of dense section, where maybe the bass player himself just added a little bit more saturation drive from the amp. In this case, maybe he was just hitting the amp a little harder with his fingers. There is a lot more of that kind of ripping sound artifact that you can hear. So it sounds kind of like maybe one of those old vinyl machines, or maybe like I was saying, like a broken tweeter in the speaker. Now, the real question is, how does this compare to the existing RX11? Because it's been around a lot longer, it's been used by professionals. Well, maybe it hasn't been used by professionals because, in my opinion, it's not really good enough to be used in that kind of way. But let's take a comparison. Let's see what it sounds like. So I'm going to go back to this original track, right? Quick tip using iZotope 11 with Logic Pro seamlessly. If you go into Logic Pro, Settings, Audio, File Editor, and choose iZotope RX11 Audio Editor as your external sample editor, that allows you to select a region, press Shift W, and it'll take you straight to RX11. So RX11 has opened up for me. I'm going to open the Music Rebalance tool. Here it is. So if you look at the Music Rebalance tool, you can see vocal, bass, drums, and other exact same categories as Logic Pro. So I wonder if there's been some kind of like under the hood borrowing, peeking on Apple's part, or if it's a completely unique algorithm, but I'm going to make sure the quality is best. And it actually allows me to remix. This is actually designed, I think it might also be a part of Ozone, where it's designed to allow you to slightly adjust the mix, right? That's what it's really designed for. It's not really designed for a stem splitting function, although that has been added completely, right? What you want to do is stem split. You press OK. And if you look here, the progress bar, it takes a lot longer than Logic Pro does, right? Logic Pro was basically instant, and then creating the overviews of the waveform took another few moments. But with this is like a serious process. Now, I'm curious if it's because maybe RX is not utilizing the Apple Silicon Neural Engine chip, since this is a program that works both in Windows and Mac. And maybe on the other hand, Logic Pro Stem Splitter is optimized for the silicon chip, so that's why it's really fast. But that's kind of just a theory that I came up with just now. But otherwise, the stem splitter takes its time with RX. So if you have some coffee, if you have a YouTube video you've been wanting to watch, you want to read a chapter of a book, I suggest buckling down and doing that. Welcome back to the second part of the recording where I'm re-recording this video. So here are the iZotope tracks. You can see that they're basically looking identical with the Logic Stem Splitter tracks in terms of just like the big scale, like it correctly identified that this chunk is a vocal in both parts, right? They look the same. It correctly identified these drum hits in both, the bass hits, right? It basically looks the same. The stereo spread of the other track also looks pretty identical. So let's listen for the details. Let's listen to the vocal here.
So you think you can stop me and spit fire?
So you can hear the doubling that Freddie Mercury is doing here. We have two different vocals singing the same thing. And that one word, in my eye,
Spit fire.
in is being kind of omitted for some reason. And at the end of this section here, you can actually hear some of the guitar riff. Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. You can hear a little bit of that creeping in. So here's iZotope kind of failing to identify between a vocal and a guitar. Let's listen to what Logic did here. So it did basically the same thing. So I don't know what kind of algorithms they're using, how different they are, but they're doing the exact same thing. And let's listen to the cymbals again. Focus on the hi-hat and the crash cymbals of the section here in the drums. Right, so it sounds like the lower drums are good, but the cymbals just don't really cut it for me. Let's listen to Logic again. Right, so let me know which one you think sounds better, because they sound pretty similar to me. Like, I'm not saying they sound like the same track, but in terms of the amount of artifacting, like it may be in slightly different areas, but it sounds kind of the same. Let's listen to the other track again. Listen for that high frequency bleed with the guitars again. Take the EQ again, filter it out. Yeah, so iZotope RX is suffering from the exact same problem where symbols, sibilants, and other stuff is not being identified properly, right? And that's what is resulting in all these artifacts where I would not be able to present this as a clean, professionally recorded and produced drum track, right? It sounds like it's been compressed in some terrible MP3 codec. There's frequencies that are missing, there's holes in the sound. Okay, let's again listen to iZotope in some of the other areas, just for fairness.
Baba just killed a man
right? The single vocal sounds really good. Again, let's listen to Logic.
Mama just killed a man.
So one other thing that stem splitters are, it's bound to be difficult to do is how does it handle reverb? Is it going to add vocal reverb into the vocal track while somehow isolating the instrument's reverb into the other track? Or is it going to add that vocal reverb into the other track, which means within your other track, you're going to have a little bit of vocal bleed, not from the main vocal itself, but from the reverb of the vocal, right? Okay, let's listen to just the instrumental without the vocals. You can hear problems with the cymbals. Okay, something later on, the part we were listening to before. Right, as an instrumental, it might sound decent, but there's still holes. In Logic Stem Splitter, let's listen to iZotope. Right, so if you're just wanting to use this to do a little bit of karaoke at home, yeah, go for it. But if you're trying to perform with this as your backing track, maybe not quite as professional sounding, you know what I mean? So going back to me from the past for the rest of the video, right? Like it sounds decent. And if you're a guitarist trying to learn this track, or if you're a bassist or a drummer or anything like that, trying to learn a track and trying to hear the part better, this is a phenomenal function. If you're trying to remix, like I've been saying, like it's just not quite there yet. I think the next big step of stem splitting is better identification of cymbals versus synths versus high-end acoustic guitar, high-end guitars and vocal sibilants and all that kind of stuff. So that was a quick look of the brand new stem splitter in Logic 11, as well as comparing it to the newly updated iZotope RX11's Music Rebalance tool. So let me know what you think. Which one sounded better? Which one's more transparent? Which one do you have more hope for in the future? Do you think AI is going to take over the whole industry? Do you think instrumental tracks are now going to be rendered obsolete because people can make their own by isolating the vocals? Let me know what you think in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe, all that stuff. Share it with your friends, whatever you want to do. This has been D.I.D. Choi, and I will see you in the next one.